Hi folks, it's Sunday, November 13th, and my name is Charles Butler. I'm the host of the Reality Check with Charles Butler, airing Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 10 a.m. Eastern Time. Monday through Friday, every day. We have a great lineup of guests, we have a great lineup of topics, and we bring you a different perspective to the news that you hear on television, using some of the same facts, but looking at it through a slightly different prism. It was brought to my attention today that a good friend of mine, Hughey Newsome, had written an article that was picked up in the Washington Post. It's called, "What Does a Black Conservative Do After a Trump Win? Leave the GOP." Well, let me just say this about Mr. Newsome. He's a great guy. I know Hughey. I've known Hughey for about 5 years now. He's been on my show numerous times doing interviews, and great guy. But at the end of the day, he's a political neophyte. Things don't get done, and things don't always go your way, but you have to have a seat at the table. You have to keep fighting for a seat at the table if you want change. We know that change is not coming in the Democratic Party for any reason, and blacks have been so-called entrenched in that party for the last 80 years without any results. So Mr. Newsome made a couple of points that I'd like to bring out, but you should go check out the article for yourself. It's in the Washington Post. Just Google Hughey Newsome. Hughey also said that he'd attended his first Republican convention down in Tampa, 2012. Well, that was about my third or fourth convention. So maybe more than that, maybe fifth convention, I think. But my point being, it's not a big deal. And I'm glad he was there. I'm glad he enjoyed the experience. And he referenced in here that a black journalist was beaten up by some so-called Republicans. You have to remember that a number of these things, as they come out in the press, they're not always true. I'm sure that group of young men who jostled that woman weren't real Republicans, certainly weren't representative of the party, and typical, jumping to conclusions. But I called Mr. Newsome because I was so upset, and I asked him why did he write this article and what was wrong with Donald Trump. And he said to me, well, he's a racist. That was the first thing out of his mouth. So I said, what did he do, or what has he done that would lead you to believe that? And he said, well, he made a tweet that said that more blacks are killing white men than the other way around. I said, well, we both know that that's not true. The Bureau of Statistics certainly don't state that. So we agreed to agree that that wasn't true what Mr. Trump said. But that's one mistake. I said, so Hillary Clinton has a drug dealer, a guy who's been on trial for killing people, a guy who surrounds himself with thugs, trying to lure black people into voting for her, and you think that somehow that's okay? That's not racist? You have anything to say to that? I said, do you know that Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton are both on YouTube videos praising Mr. Trump for supporting their efforts? Not 1 year, in the 80s, in the 90s, and the 2000s. So people are quick to jump to conclusions. People are quick to make accusations without any sound facts. And then they throw up in your face, of course, but Hughey didn't do this to me, about the apartment buildings. I said, well, it's my understanding that all of the big apartment renters or developers were sued by the United States government for redlining or housing discrimination, and they all settled. That's what I understand. There weren't individual incidents. So all that said, I don't know how Mr. Trump is going to do with black people. I don't know how black Republicans will fare in his administration, or if we will fare any better in his administration than we have in the last. But I can tell you, by far, Reagan, Bush, and Bush did very well by black Republicans. When I look at this article that Mr. Newsome wrote, it's a little disturbing because here's a political neophyte who gets picked up in the paper, and he talks about the party as if he's been in the party 20 years. He may have been in the party 4 or 5 years. He doesn't know any of the players in the party. He just joined a group called Project 21, and he wanted to be a conservative. I think he's a little politically naive, but that's okay. And he's a little idealistic, and that's okay. We need those types. Hughey's not going anywhere because he has nowhere to go. So, that's just the name of that tune. And for the rest of these people out there who are talking about they're scared of Donald Trump, and Donald is a bad guy, and he's the worst. I was scared, and I said this on the air. I said I'm very afraid of Mr. Obama and his presidency. He's going to be like Woodrow Wilson, a tyrant, an academic who felt the American people were his students to be lectured to. Barack did the same thing. So he's also going to be like Jimmy Carter, a weak president, weak on domestic and foreign issues, perceived as a punk, and he was. And also, his administration was going to be like that of Ulysses S. Grant, scandal ridden, and it has been. So we'll see what Mr. Obama does, if he's going to pardon Hillary Clinton of all acts that she could have committed or she may have committed against the United States of America. It's going to be interesting. But a couple of other developments that are out there, but I generally try to keep these vignettes to about 5 minutes or so. So we'll talk about that when we come back in my next group of videos. Thank you. Stay tuned.